Good evening, gamers. My name is KarQ. I've actually been on vacation for the past 3 weeks. Just got back a few days ago. I went to Japan, I went to the Philippines, had a great time. Definitely needed that to get a little refresh. I don't know if you could tell, but like I've been a little burnt out on content creation. I've been pretty consistent over the past like 9 years, so I just needed a little bit of a break, and I feel good. I feel refreshed, and I'm gonna do my best to be more accountable and be more consistent with like the hot takes, blog reading, and the Reddit stuff, etc., on all the channels, on the main channel, this channel, Marvel Rivals, etc. Here we go. Here's some hot takes that we banked up over the past few weeks. Let's begin. First one is hot take. Now more than ever is the time to create PvE. Once they finish adding all the maps and heroes to Stadium and other mechanics like consumables and quests, I forgot they actually were gonna add all that stuff for Stadium. They will have the framework for PvE. I am a huge fan of horde modes like COD Zombies, and I want to see an Overwatch horde mode where you fight waves of NPCs to earn money and buy items. Counterpoint, they've always had the framework for PvE, and they use that to kind of model a little bit of Stadium off of that. I know they've referenced how a lot of the powers and items were not referenced from PvE, but the whole structure of like enemy NPCs and everything have already been developed. I don't know if now more than ever you need to create like a PvE mode, or at least anything that Jeff Kaplan envisioned 6-7 years ago whenever they announced it. But like more LTMs where they have waves of NPCs are totally fine and acceptable. I genuinely enjoyed some of the early PvE stuff they put out in 2022, 2023. When Overwatch 2 first released, and they used remnants of their PvE, and they did like the whole Wrath of the Bride and like the boss mechanics and stuff. I think like a separate maybe fun zombies mode would be great, but like a whole standalone PvE in what they envisioned, probably not. But more than ever, you can totally create extra modes, but I think they've kind of dialed back on that. I know your take is that it's the best time to create it, but I disagree. They've dialed back simply because they've tried some of the arcade stuff, and like I said, I enjoyed the Wrath of the Bride and those Halloween PvE events and the Diablo one where like, you know, you have different powers like you said, but at the end of the day, I think they realized it wasn't like a big needle mover. The needle didn't move. It didn't bring anybody back. I don't think any mode like that will bring more people back. The game is best at PvP, and I'm actually my counter hot take is I'm glad they actually ripped the band-aid off and decided to scrap it, because they knew there was no replayability and it would have been disappointing. But small fun little modes, sure. Another counterpoint I just remembered for PvE is they tried a few more of that. Remember they did like a temporary mode where you're in that like blue polygon mode and you had to like defend the tower from a bunch of monsters and like grab some coins or something. Do you guys remember that? I forgot what that was called, but that was so short-lived because all these little PvE modes require a lot of resources, but they never really hit the mark. They don't move the needle. I hate using that term again, but you know what I mean? So I disagree. I don't think this is a good take. They do not need to do PvE at all. Hot take, Reaper is the best DPS in Stadium, but he has no fixed meta build. I actually think Reaper is pretty versatile in Stadium. I agree with this. I don't know if he's the best, but he's certainly pretty reliable because he can play in a bunch of different ways. His build that I enjoyed when I played a little bit of Reaper a few weeks ago was the one where you do the Wraith form, heals you when you're less than half, and you get super annoying into the enemy team. You can duel anybody because you heal so much the moment you press Wraith. Pretty mild take though. I don't think he's the best, but he's certainly pretty reliable. Next hot take. Oh, okay, wait. Talking about PvE. PvE doesn't have to be replayable. Story games are meant to be played once, just like a movie is meant to be watched once. Are movies meant to be watched once? I don't know about that one, Chief. If you really enjoy the story, you may decide to play it or watch it again, especially if you're doing it with friends or to analyze it deeper. I love the story missions and would easily pay $15 for the next chapter without an inkling of a doubt. Yeah, I don't agree with this take. I see where you're coming from, where the PvE doesn't have to be replayable, but I think you're in the minority where like you enjoyed the missions, and I do think most people did enjoy it, but I don't know if it's $15 justification for the large majority. Again, you're in the minority there. The narrative is good, but they could just move the narrative of the story with like those cinematics, and I do think PvE needs to have replayability personally, or else it's just gonna be like such a nothing burger in the grand scheme of Overwatch. It's just another set of missions without any incentive to play them over and over again. Clear it once and then that's it. Like there's no way. Unless they were offered for free, then maybe we have a different discussion here. If they release the rest of the missions for free, which I think somebody suggested that they should do for the good of the game, for like the just for like the good PR. If there's a couple of finished missions in the back end that they just never ended up releasing, they should release them for free. But I do think there's probably some polish they never finished off, and that's why they're not doing it. But yeah, I see where you're going at, sort of, with like the whole you just play it once and enjoy it, but not for $15. And also the PvE not being replayable means it has to be like a really solid standalone like piece, but we all know like we have fragments of it and it was never going to be like a AAA standalone piece that they once envisioned. So that's why it needs to be replayable if it's going to be similar to the missions they've released beforehand. Next hot take is that Moira needs a rework for several reasons. One, her current state doesn't allow for buffs because she would be too oppressive in low elo, so she sort of just stays trash in the ranks that matter. And two, her current abilities and playstyle sort of reinforce the DPS Moira mindset. I feel she is incredibly archaic design compared to the rest of the support roster outside of Mercy, maybe. That is certainly a hot take. I don't agree with this. Let's unpack it. You said, number one, her current state doesn't allow for buffs because she'd be too oppressive. I sort of agree with that, because if you just keep tuning raw numbers, she either becomes too good or really bad. Right now, I actually think she's in a pretty solid medium point. There's definitely some high elo Moira players who are definitely getting by just fine, and she's definitely very solid in your average and even low ranks. And you say she sort of just stay trash in the ranks that matter, but like, this is the part where I pick a bone with you. What do you mean ranks that matter? Ranks only matter in the rank that you're playing at? Is that what you're trying to say? Like you're in Diamond or Masters and like that's the rank that matters? Ranks in like Bronze, Silver, and Gold matter to the players who are in those ranks, right? We don't need to gatekeep that. And next point, you're saying the current abilities and playstyle reinforces the DPS Moira mindset. I disagree with that as well, simply because you can totally heal bot and do like just enough. And the whole DPS Moira mindset is just an alternative way to generate value depending on the game state. And that's where like another skill or a skill check assessment as a Moira player comes in, where like you assess whether you can generate more value for your team by going DPS Moira for these like, you know, next 20 seconds because of like how many people are alive, how many enemies are alive, which teammates of yours are alive. You assessing the game state should determine whether you go DPS Moira mindset or you can, you know, play more heal body and like help the rest of your team with support, like with heals specifically. The bigger thing that kind of reinforces DPS Moira mindset is actually the 5v5 versus 6v6, because when I play 6v6, I feel like Moira is generally better value because you get two tanks who get to clump up and you get more AoE heals. But in the 5v5 format, Moira may depending on the game state, maybe on average can find easier value by going DPS by like flanking enemy backlines, again depending on what they play. But like because there's like one less tank to like AoE heal, like the bulk of her ult charge gain from healing is, you know, AoE spread, right? And if there's one less tank, like, you know, there's probably more opportunities on average to go assassinate enemies to generate better value for your team. You know what I mean? In any case, you say she's an archaic design, but she's the complete opposite. I think she's a very simple design and like simple and accessible, and that's perfectly acceptable for a game like Overwatch. Next hot take. Sombra is caught in a loop situation. She seems strong, annoying, and oppressive, so she gets banned, meaning people fight her less and then they get bad at fighting her, and then Sombra gets nerfed. Because she's nerfed, she might not be banned, but because people are bad at fighting her, she seems strong, annoying, and oppressive, and thus goes back to being banned because causing the cycle to repeat. I actually agree with this take. She's kind of caught in a vicious cycle, like an endless loop, an Izanagi, as the Naruto fans would say. Is that the right one? I think the biggest determinant on what gets banned isn't always objectively the strongest hero in the meta, but it's just what's the most annoying thing to fight. So like people don't like fighting Freya because she feels very like strong. People don't like playing against Sombra. But then you look at the raw win rates and data, like they don't have like an outlier percentage, a win rate percentage. Like they're not at like a 57% win rate, which is a little bit outrageous, by the way. I think they're kind of like around the middle or even below. They're like 45% or something when they do play it. But people just often remember the bad times or the annoying times where they get owned by a Sombra or owned by a Freya. I forgot what that's called. It's one of those terms that I just can't remember off the top of my head. You remember the biases of the bad times, but not the times where you did end up winning. Or, you know, you often also remember the ones that like when your teammate does pick Sombra or they do pick Freya, they do absolute air and they do nothing for your team. We'll remember some of those times, but you remember it more often when the enemy one who plays well smokes you. You know what I mean? But yeah, I see what you mean. People have less experience fighting and dealing with it because they see them less, and thus the devs make the decision to nerf them because they're getting banned a lot. And then like so-and-so, the endless loop. And that's why I sort of understand with this recent patch where they nerfed Freya's damage, but then they gave her a little bit more ammo. But I read the comments and people were losing their minds like, oh, dumb devs. Why did they nerf one part but then just rebuff her anyways? Now she's gonna permanently get banned. Well, it's just kind of an adjustment of the power. They lowered like the kill threshold or like some damage breakpoints maybe to give her a little bit more spam. Outside of that, it's a slight, very minor shift, but all in all, obviously not enough to move the needle. But they're just trying to like push and pull to see what would stop them from getting banned all the time, but also like not make them unplayable. In any case, I'm rambling. I sort of of agree with you on this one. Kind of like in an endless loop, Sombra and Freya right now. Next hot take, rank isn't as important as everyone treats it. This opinion isn't just beholden to Overwatch. Discrediting anyone who's not top ranked is short-sighted. Rank can definitely affect your perspective, and a higher rank should indicate more knowledge, but rank does not equal right. Top players have been wrong, and bronze players can be right, even if they're only right when referring to their own rank. Low ranks can study and watch top plays to be better informed, and then there's people with good opinions that have coached people up to pro level despite only being diamond or masters themselves. Rank shouldn't be the first thing you bring up in a disagreement, and I shouldn't have to tell people that I'm masters, GM, eternal, or whatever top rank to have an opinions license, quote unquote. And before anyone says it must be a low rank, I've hit high ranks in multiple games, blah blah, including Overwatch, and the fact that I feel the need to include that is my point. I mean, I have nothing to say with this. I totally agree. People like to wield their rank on their shoulder because that's their only like gotcha. That's their only like their beacon of credibility. Sometimes there is a little bit more credibility if you've personally been able to achieve something. Because it's the internet, you miss a lot of nuance and context, so people like to like wear that on their sleeve and use that as a way to win arguments. But it's the internet. That's just how it is. But I agree with you. Rank is not as important as everyone treats it, and it shouldn't be the first thing they bring up in a disagreement. I also agree with that, and you're right. People with like, you know, whatever rank, lower ranks can totally coach and be right in certain situations, etc., etc. I have nothing else to add to this. It's a good point you had to make. Hot take, Zenyatta is by far the strongest support for a solo queue player until GM. Not necessarily Zenyatta, because he has stronger, pretty glaring weaknesses against certain comps, but like the idea of like solo queue supports to climb, the ones that can offer good offensive capabilities are often easier and stronger for a stronger player who can aim, which is why Lifeweaver and Mercy players take the longest to hit GM, because their impact on the offensive end isn't as powerful. They can be pretty neutral at the 50, 50, 51, 52% win rate, but if you're like very talented at aiming and fragging, that's where like Zen and Illari and like even good Baptiste and Kirikos can totally win games more often and be like a bigger factor, an X factor until GM. But like there's a lot of ifs, buts, and like, you know, context depending on, again, your raw aim capability. So I don't necessarily agree that Zen is by far the strongest support, but like he is one of them if you're just like absolutely lethal, right? If you're non-stop hitting heads, yeah, you can pop off. But if you're like non-stop hitting heads as Mercy, like it's kind of impossible with the way the projectile is and like the way your hero naturally lends itself. You're kind of like trying to enable somebody else to do it versus just doing it yourself. Same with like Weaver in a lot of cases. And like it's literally been proven, like they have top players take way more games on average to get to GM, especially if they're smurfing. But like, I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to condone the smurfing, but like that's the idea of making impact in solo queue specifically, generating impact, value, blah, 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 blah. Hot take, the ban system should actually remove the 2 per role limit, as there's sometimes just enough hero overlap that it feels needed to ban more than 2 heroes on certain maps. For example, on maps with long sightlines, you can ban Widow, Hanzo, Sojourn, and Freya. They're all extremely dominant, having either one-shot potential or insane burst damage from range, but you can't get rid of them all and will always have to deal with at least 2 of them no matter what. I think this could be a conversation when there's more heroes in the game, but I don't think it's necessary to completely remove one complete archetype based on the map you're playing. Like if you're playing long sightlines, you want to remove every single long sniper because that's the way you want to play. But then there's going to be the opposite sort of players who like, oh, it's a long sightline map. I wish I could play a long range hero like Widow. Oh, it got banned. Oh, Hanzo got banned. All right, maybe I'll play Sojourn and Freya because there's a few options left and maybe some of their stronger options are nerfed. If you look at the grand scheme of things, when you continually add more heroes, like you don't want to get rid of one completely. Like you don't want to completely remove poke, completely remove them in any of the roles. Like you want options. You just want to remove some of the outlier options like Widowmaker or Freya, for example, but you can get by with some of the other ones. It's kind of like the lesser of 2 evils, and I think that's fine. I don't think we need to add more hero bans at this current time. I actually currently like the system. I think Overwatch's ban system is one of the best as a counter hot take. All right, last hot take is that Stadium is fun because so many annoying characters are missing, like Widowmaker, Sombra, Pharah, Sojourn, and Mauga. My counter hot take is that Stadium will still be fun with those characters in, because Stadium completely changes them so much that they're not even like the same at all compared to the base game. For example, Zenyatta, like who is traditionally weak to like some dive, is not as weak, and I feel like heroes like Sombra would not be as annoying in Stadium because there's so many, you have so much more HP, you have more ways to deal with it and wackier ways to kind of fly and get by. Like for example, if you're playing Rhine and it's like, oh, in the base game I hate playing against Mei because I get walled off, but now as Rhine you can do the flying charge to like get out of the Mei wall. Now there's more answers to the annoying parts of a hero kits in Stadium, so Stadium can still be fun even if you add annoying characters, because all the ones that are weak to the annoying characters characters can have annoying counter abilities nowadays. So, all right, and that's it for this week. Make sure to add some more hot takes in the comments. See you guys next week.